Morning Intuitives, another pre-work video, and I'm going to remind everyone, if you're in America that is, that today is election day for primaries. This, in a lot of ways, if you're a progressive like me, is more important than the actual election because first we must beat, the Clinton person trying to hold on to that cushy DNC cash and try to get someone who, actually gives a damn about Americans who aren't either millionaires and donate to their campaign or, people that are white suburbanites born between the years 1946 and 1964. For establishment types, those are the only two categories of people they seem to give a shit about. So, I'm going to go, well, I actually have to work the polls for a couple hours after work because we don't have a Democratic committee man here because we usually don't because it's a very Republican area. I've done it on and off over the years, so, I'm, essentially the Democratic committee man emeritus, and I have to help out for a couple hours because no one else will. Yeah, it's cool. I get to see my old political mentors, group of three older ladies who I found out just a few years ago are also witches. What are the odds, right? Anyway, get into this topic of this video, and the reason I'm doing this today is because it very much relates to the video I did yesterday, so it's kind of a part two, but kind of not. And I want to get into why INFJs hate nepotism, because we do. I know I do. I know other INFJs that do. Nepotism, good old boys clubs, old boys clubs, cronyism, anything of that nature. Why do we hate it so much? Well, in a nutshell, it's not meritocratic. INFJs, are very individualistic, often nonconformist, so we believe each individual person should be, judged based on their individual merit, what they have done themselves in terms of, we're talking mainly about jobs here, work ethic, education, experience, reliability, eagerness to learn, willingness to work long hours, things of that nature. That should be what's important in a professional setting for hiring or promotions, not, who your daddy was or who your uncle is or, or there that my frat boy and that my drinking buddy and, or, well, yes, his grandpapa was, in the club 100 years ago. Therefore, his hand is stamped. He may be a malingerer and a drunkard, but damn it, he's in our club, kind of thing. We abhor that. And to quickly revisit a concept I said in the last video, like I said about INFJ envy. INFJs aren't the kind of people that envy money. We envy like merit and having been given a fair chance to make their mark on the world or to help people, or people who have been given a fair chance to do whatever it is they sought to do. Like, I'll use myself as an example real quick. Like, am I envious of, say, a professional athlete or an actor? Yes, not for their fame or fortune, but in the sense that they worked hard to become what they are. But at some point, somewhere along the path, somebody gave them a fair shot, whether it be to make the team or to audition for the, breakout role. They got a chance along the way to prove themselves, whereas, I haven't. I've earned multiple, but I tend to get cheated out of them. See my bullying and hazing news segment if you're a little curious about that. And in contrast, like when I first got hired as a firefighter in 2006 at the age of 19, I was cheated out of that too. But had I not been cheated out of that, and now 16 years down the road, I'd be, a captain in the fire department, making like 135, 140 grand a year. Would that version of me be envious of, a professional football player or a famous actor? No, not at all, because that version of me got his fair chance at the profession that I had been, working towards and getting certifications to become since the age of 17, and that me would be where he's supposed to be, if that makes sense. I wanted to clear that up. But back to nepotism. Oh, nepotism in the old boys clubs, my greatest and first adversary, and we will continue to wage war until one of us is done. And considering I'm one guy, and it's tough to break the cycle of old boys clubs when you're a nobody all by yourself. And then, I don't have a Davy Crockett, and dragons aren't real in that sense. I have Cass here, but he doesn't. My Casanova dragon, my blue dragon. Blue dragons are the best. Everybody knows that. And I'll argue with anybody who tries to say otherwise. No one will convince me otherwise, but he doesn't do much but look cool. So, and I got Huey, Dewey, and Louie over here, but they don't really do much either. It's my herons from my family crest. My last name means horse lord, but yet my crest is 3 herons, so I call them Huey, Dewey, and Louie. Anyway, in nepotism, it basically means that any work you do any merit you have isn't important, because it's all about who you're related to, or in the sense of cronyism, who you know. So therefore, in positions, people are getting positions that they haven't earned, that they're not the best candidate. It's solely based on their network, and people who have put in the work are not. And that really screws up the world, because especially in a world where one must go into debt to get an education, and if you're in your 30s like me, you were told, most important things to get a degree. Any degree is a good degree. It's an investment. And that all turned out to be a crock. And before you guys attack me and say, gender studies and all that, my degree's in plant biology with a focus on turf science and a minor in environmental soil science. So it's a STEM degree. So, I got you. And I graduated cum laude, which is low honors, i.e. I was a B+ student. And I had some grad classes in there. And then I worked as a TA. And I won awards in my internship. So, I did what I was told to do, and was basically told you're not in the club. So, for INFJs, obviously we feel a lot of empathy towards people, and we're going to definitely empathize with the person who played by the rules, wanted nothing more than to be in a certain profession, and isn't even given a chance to climb the ladder because, the boomers pulled the ladder up behind them, and then they only throw ropes down to, people in the club. It's this interesting notion. There was a much greater chance for climbing the ladder and opportunity and advancement through social classes in their young adulthood with, we're not going to get too deep into this, but strong unions, free or cheap college, wages were about 20% higher when adjusted for inflation, better benefits. But no, they pulled the ladder up behind us, and now they're basically trying to say, well, there were no such things as ladders. They're retroactively trying to destroy all, existence of ladders and all ladder manuals so that we can't manufacture new ladders, and saying that they were just better jumpers because they're just better at everything. And many of them benefited from the old boys club, nepotism, cronyism, that kind of thing. So, as INFJs, that lack of merit, what really gets to us with nepotism and old boys clubs is when it's defended. I mean, let's be honest, it exists pretty much everywhere, but at least most places in this day and age, they try to hide it, because they know, or it should be in most cases, the notion of old boys club should be a pejorative. But where I live in Chester County, it's celebrated. That's how it's supposed to be. It always be that way. His daddy a cop, that mean he get to be a cop. I don't care, how many people he run down when he drink too much. His daddy a cop, he a cop. Way it's supposed to be. Don't matter if he didn't pass no test. Yeah, and that's a bit of a parody of something that actually happened. An individual I know a few years older than me failed the state police exam, and magically, he was hired by his father's police department, even though he barely passed that exam. But there was a job waiting for him because, he's entitled to that. That's how it's supposed to work. And that notion, of, it's like, here is John Smith. Like, to the old boys clubs, the hero is, I'll make up their hero, but it would be, let's just say, John Smith. And on John Smith's statue, it would be like, he couldn't do much, he didn't know much, but he knew the right people. And that's, what it comes down to. It's also important, to note that another reason why INFJs hate old boys clubs and nepotism so much is because, well, it just creates yes men. It's perpetuation of the status quo. If someone in power who is corrupt, hires his friends and his relatives to be his lieutenants, essentially, is that corruption, that exploitation that powerful group of people going to do change? No, because the guy at the top basically owns everybody under him, because most of those people would be either not qualified or barely qualified to be there. And there's this arrogance amongst people in the old boys club that pisses people like me off, because they'll strut around like, I worked my way up, I earned it. It's like, your boss is your father, and that's the only boss you ever had. Or another example would be like, your boss is your best friend's drinking buddy. Like, you never even finished college. Like, that job wasn't even posted, it was just given to you. And by and large, where I live, that not only is the case, it's still celebrated. Like, the township roads department is proud of the fact that 8 of the 9 people on that crew are related, and that they don't even post job openings. Somebody just hires a friend or a buddy. And if you're, say, someone, like, I know this story, from New Jersey, who worked on roads, did that kind of work for 5 years, moves here because of his wife's teaching job, goes to get a job there, they tell him they're not hiring anybody, and then a week later he finds out they hired, Bob's nephew, Bob Jr., who's had 2 DUIs and no driver's license, but hey, he's Bob's nephew, and that's all that matters. And that's where it comes, in part to why this is important for INFJs, ENFJs too, because we're the ones that call things out. We're the leaders and the lieutenants of creating positive change, of saying to the world, this is wrong, this is corrupt, this must change. And in this day and age, we need to end the era of the old boys club and to call out nepotism for what it is. It is a dirty word. It's not something that's, tradition in the way it should be. It's corruption. It's corruption. Hiring people not based on their merit, skill, and experience, but based on who they're related to. I mean, I thought we didn't want an aristocracy in this country, and it's sad how many people are still proud of that notion, but it needs to be called out for what it is, corruption, because it almost becomes, in a world where that's celebrated, it's almost Calvinistic, because everything's predetermined. If you weren't born into the right old boys club, then the job you want is off limits to you. It doesn't matter what you do, it's all predetermined, because all that matters is perpetuation of tradition. Hey, daddy a cop, he a cop. If your daddy wasn't a cop, you don't get to become a cop. And if you were born in an area that doesn't have professional firefighters, you can't move to become one, because you must stay in the corrupt old boys club that you were born in, because, I don't know, because boomers say so and they're never wrong. That's essentially what I've been told. Now, before anybody jumps on me, there are like a few exceptions where obviously it's like, yeah, hiring a family member is not corrupt, and that would be in like small family businesses, like, say, a plumbing business where the son or daughter worked with the father and learned the trade. That's different. That father owns that business, and the key word is owns. Not is the CEO, not is the chief of the department, owns it outright. There is never an excuse for nepotism in the public sector, because no one person owns that. Like, just because somebody, say, the fire chief, he's the highest guy, he doesn't own that department. It's funded by the taxpayers. It's not his. It, by definition, can't be owned by somebody. And yet, nepotism is rampant within emergency services, not only for getting people in, but for promotions and sweeping things under the rug that other people would get, in trouble for simply because, he related to him. Different rules. He doesn't have to do his probationary thing. He related to him. He's born with it. He inherited his grandfather's experience, which is a crock of shit. That just because, let's say, your grandfather was a badass trucky firefighter and ran hundreds of fire calls over his career. Yeah, that's his experience. No taking that away from him, but he can't lay his hand on you and you absorb that experience. That doesn't work that way. So nepotism also leads to mediocrity because in a lot of cases, when someone is hired based on who they're related to, who they know, I've done this spiel a lot, this video already. They also usually aren't held accountable when they're not up to par. So not only does that person get into a job that they may not even be qualified for, or certainly not the best qualified for in most cases, they don't have to perform at an adequate level like, say, everybody else in their position in their department. And that causes mediocrity because now you have somebody that shouldn't have been there in the first place who cannot be held accountable for their failings, and it makes everybody else around them have to pick up the slack and work harder. That's not right either. I personally, I've thought about this, ran it through my intuition. Those that defend nepotism, here's some INFJ logic for you. Those that defend nepotism are the ones that have benefited from it and know they would be nowhere without it. I see no other reason why anybody would defend nepotism or an old boys club other than that they've benefited from it and they'd be nowhere today without it. And those that, want to be a part of it aren't any better. So my little rant about nepotism, it's quite appropriate on election day. And yeah, that's the other point to make. Just because somebody's dad was a good governor doesn't mean they're a good governor, and it doesn't mean that their brother Fredo deserves to be on CNN either. But just remember, what's important is somebody's merit, somebody's intelligence, somebody's education, somebody's work ethic, the things that particular person has done on their own accord, not who they are related to. The age of kings is over. Long gone. Anyway, I wanted to do a little rant on nepotism. It kind of got away from me, but I think I made some decent points. So, again, INFJs, we judge people on their individualistic senses. We're not tribalists, we're not conformists, so it's who that person is that's important to us, not, what club or group or family they belong to. Because somebody can be from a prominent family that has done some good things and still be a scumbag. We all know that. Anyway, trust your intuition. If somebody seems like a nepotist, don't take any shit from them. They didn't earn their spot. They have no right to strut around. They're just daddy's little boy. And remember, to have integrity and to call out nepotism and old boys clubs because their era needs to end.